Overpower Quill Volley is the best build that Diablo 4 has ever seen. We're clearing pit 150s with the absolute min-maxed version of this build, and this is due to having 4 gigantic multipliers and obviously some bugs playing all together that I'm gonna explain to you. Now, the first scaler is Rod of Kepeleke, and not only does the stat with chance for core skills to hit twice does an insane amount of damage, but also the unique effect is incredible. Namely, you are going to add the basic skill tag to your core skills, making them deal less damage but cost no vigor, which is already a nice thing, especially early on, but for the late game, the second part of the unique effect is extremely important. You are going to spend all of your vigor when you are at max vigor every time you use a core skill, and you are going to bring the core skill back to its full size and full damage, and on top of that, per maximum vigor that you have spent while emptying your resource, you are going to get a 3% multiplier per vigor spent on that cast. So obviously we want to trigger the Kepeleke proc every time we attack, and we can actually do that by getting the Ring of Midnight Sun into the build. When you critically strike, you regain 50% of the vigor spent, and Kepeleke makes all of our attacks crit regardless, so this is going to be active all of the time. But the problem here is we would only restore 50% of our maximum vigor, forcing us to attack twice to be able to proc the Kepeleke. So what we are going to do is we are also going to stack resource generation to 100% if you have a 50% vigor Midnight Sun ring, which is then going to double the vigor regeneration from Midnight Sun to 100%. So every time you're hitting, you are proccing not only the Kepeleke emptying your resource, but you're also proccing the Midnight Sun, completely refilling your resource again. If you don't have a 50% Midnight Sun, check out the build guide that is linked down below. Here in the FAQ and mechanics section, we have the mechanics that explain the Rod of Kepeleke and Ring of Midnight Sun calculation. Here you can see what you need for your resource generation if you, for example, have a 40% Ring of the Midnight Sun, or if you have a 35% Ring of the Midnight Sun. All the other values are also here in this nice little table. If you like these in-depth build explanations to understand all of the mechanics, I provide that literally every season for all of the top build guides, and if you don't want to miss out on this, I suggest you subscribe to the YouTube channel. The second way how we scale this amazing build's damage is redirected force. This is basically taking a defensive mechanic, which is block chance, and also scaling that into your offenses. In this case, you are going to get a 70% of your block chance as additional critical strike damage multiplier. Since we are always critting through Kepeleke, that is basically active all of the time. But not only that, blocking even doubles those 70%, so you obviously want to be blocking every time. You can already see that the Rod of Kepeleke has 45% block chance as an implicit, and there's also a lot of ways how we can cap that block chance and basically block every time. This is where interdiction comes into play. This aspect is going to give you block chance per resource stack, and we're also stacking resolve for a lot of other reasons, but this is going to give you a permanent block chance cap, and on top of that, Armored Hide also grants 100% block chance and unstoppable during its duration. Now, speaking of resolve, that is usually a defensive mechanic. As you can see right here under the Perseverance box, Resolve increases your damage reduction by 20% while active, and taking direct damage consumes a stack. So this is basically like a mini Dark Shroud, so to say, where you can build up the Resolve, and every time you're getting hit, you're losing Resolve, but as long as you have just one stack, you permanently reduce the damage taken by 20%. As I said, this is already a very good defensive mechanic, but we are scaling our damage with this. And as you can see right here, we're getting 2% multiplicative damage for each stack of Resolve we have, which then obviously prompts us to put as many maximum Resolve stacks tempers on our gear to not only increase our defenses, but also increase our offenses. The cool thing about this is the more Resolve stacks you have, you are actually going to get more damage reduction with the Perseverance skill passive. And the fourth way of scaling Quill Volley damage is actually the Overpower itself. Banished Lord's Talisman has been used in a lot of builds in the past that made overpowering possible for builds that usually don't do that. And this is exactly happening here again. We need to spend 275 primary resources so that our next core skill is guaranteed to overpower, and then if it also critically strikes and overpowers, it is gonna get a 60% damage multiplier. And so since we're spending all of our resource all of the time, every attack with the Kepeleke stuff that I explained earlier, we just need to boost our primary resource maximum to 275. The cool thing about this is currently the Quill Volley Vigor cost is being deducted of the total needed for Banished Lord's Talisman. So you only really need 240 maximum vigor so that you are going to overpower continuously with all of the damage multipliers combined. And you're going to do that with a Shaco, for example, because you have maximum resource. You can also, if you don't have a Shaco yet, use a Tybalt's Will, for example, and then play with a normal helmet. And then you actually won't have a big trouble of getting those 240 maximum vigor, because if you take a look at the Paragon board, here on the Sapping Paragon board together with the Hubris glyph, there is actually a lot of maximum resource that you can get to further amplify your maximum resource, making it a little bit easier to hit those 240 primary resource requirement for every hit to overpower. We're going to use Hubris here because not only we are boosting the additive damage right here that you can see, but we are also boosting the maximum resource from these magic nodes, which is not only making it easier to proc Banished Lords in the first place, but it's also making Rod of Kepeleke deal much more damage because of the additional 3% critical strike damage multiplier per vigor spent. If you want to rebuild this character, I suggest you check out the planner that is linked down in the description below. Also, if you want to read up on more, we do obviously have the written build guide by Woody down in the description as well, where you can get a little bit more info. If you are not at the absolute maximum yet, you can actually see how to gear up the character with the starter version. You can also have a nice little checkbox right here if you so desire. And if you really want to max out the character, there is one new thing of advice, one new piece of advice right here with the resource cost reduction that is basically playing into the Kepeleke proc, and this is also intended. This is basically a new discovery, and this is going to make it so that you basically have more maximum resource for the Kepeleke proc. It basically reduces the resource costs, which then counts as if you would have spent more of the resource for the Kepeleke proc. So this is a direct damage multiplier that you can put on your ring. Speed farming and pushing T150 pits or killing bosses with this build is actually an amazing experience. I suggest you check this out as long as it isn't nerfed through all the various bugs that are involved in the build that makes it scale to absolute oblivion. And if you want to see any of this live, I suggest you check out the Twitch that is going to be linked down in the description and also in the pinned comment below. And if you like content similar to this, then subscribe to the YouTube channel, and I'll see you next time.